Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina, and I am the Capability Building Coordinator for Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up is a part of the Info Exchange Group. Info Exchange is a not-for-profit social enterprise that has delivered technology for social justice for over 25 years. With over 100 staff across Australia and New Zealand, we tackle the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar Office 365 Implementation Considerations, which will be presented by Marcus Harvey from Info Exchange. We'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type it into the questions box on your webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you through there. If you have any questions during the session, please also type it into the questions box and Marcus will answer them in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Please note that your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you are on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you shortly after the webinar ends. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there will be a short survey at the end. We'd appreciate it if you took a few minutes to provide us with some feedback. That's all from me for now. I'll pass it over to Marcus to get things started. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks so much and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be talking about Office 365 and helping you think through how do you implement it successfully, because we've worked with hundreds of organisations, hundreds of non-profits, helping them with Office 365, some from the very early days when they just want to know how do I get onto it, and also with a lot of organisations that are partway through the process but either have struggled or are not sure how to take the next step. So what we wanted to do today was to talk through a number of things. First of all, the options and inclusions, because Office 365, there is actually more license options in Office 365 than you can poke a stick at. So I want to talk through what the main options are and how you can mix and match things to get the what you need at the best possible price point. Then I'm going to talk through a little bit about why you should think about using Office 365 and help you to think about, let's get some real clarity on that. Because if you're clear about why you want to use Office 365, then we can scope and design the implementation to achieve that. If you're not clear on why you want to use Office 365, it can sometimes become a bit of a muddle and you don't deliver the benefits that you weren't really sure of in the first place. So being really clear why you want to use it is critical for a successful implementation, because whether it's mobility and allowing your staff to work out of the office, whether it's improved security, whether it's file sharing, whether it's greater resilience and disaster recoverability, or whether it's all of those things, being clear on that helps you to design a solution that will deliver that. And if you're not clear, you probably won't get it. We want to talk about each of the main elements in more detail. So Exchange, SharePoint, Yammer, Teams. We've actually dropped Skype from the presentation now because all new tenants no longer get Skype as part of Office 365. All new tenants get Teams, which is a vastly improved experience. I want to talk about how you build that business case. If you're clear about why you're doing it, and then implementing Office 365 will always take either time or money, and often both. So if you need to build a business case, how do you do that? I want to talk about infrastructure, because while Office 365 may well be in the cloud, it's not right for all organizations to move to the cloud. Some organizations should move completely to the cloud. Some organizations should have the majority of their infrastructure on premise, and others need a real mix of the two. So I want to talk through that to help you understand the principles and to make a good decision so you get the best possible environment. Privacy and security is always critical, as well as some top tips for success so that your implementation is successful, as well as other resources and time for questions as well. And they're the main things I wanted to talk through. I will just very quickly turn my video on so you can, or at least I will aim to turn my video on, hopefully so you can see me. Morning, everyone. Hope you had a lovely Easter. Sorry, I should have said that at the very start. And so I'll turn the video off and then turn it on for questions again at the end. But really hoping to give you everything you need out of this. And if there's key questions you don't have answered, please save them to the end. Just put them in the chat screen. Tina will absolutely look after you and make sure they're answered at the end. If they're really tricky, I will take them offline and go and ask one of my senior techs for assistance. So first thing is the main Office 365 selections. And there's three primary options that we see the majority of nonprofits choosing. They're Business Essentials or E1, Business Premium, and E3. Currently called Enterprise 3. I understand as of very shortly it will be rebadged to E3. Good old Microsoft have decided to do some renaming. But let me talk through each of those because it's really important to understand. Business Essentials or E1, that is a donation license. So as a eligible Microsoft nonprofit, there is no cost to the E1 or Business Essentials license. You can license up to 2,000 users with the E1. It excludes the Office desktop applications, but it includes all the core services. So Exchange, Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, Skype for Business, etc. It gives web versions of Word and Excel. It provides a terabyte per user of OneDrive storage, together with a 50 gigabyte inbox. If you're still running an Exchange server, that will sound like a godsend, as well as online videos, instant messaging, Teams for collaboration, Yammer if you are a larger organization and want to bring groups together across your organization, as well as a host of other tools, Sway for digital storytelling, Planner for project management, etc. Now, one thing with Business E1 is that because it doesn't include the desktop applications, so Word, Excel, PowerPoint, many organizations that select E1 for a number of their staff then purchase through Connecting Up Office Standard, which is available as a donation for $43. So for those organizations that do pick Business Essentials or E1, most of those organizations that we work with then look at the web versions. Sometimes they're fine if you're only intermittently using Word, Excel, etc. But often they'll decide for an investment of $43 per PC to buy an Office license. And that has software assurance, so it will be upgraded free of charge within a 2-year time frame. I will mention that Microsoft, I wish they didn't, but it wasn't my decision, have also changed or clarified the rules slightly. If you have volunteers that are acting as a part-time volunteer, don't perform the role of a full-time staff member, that's now a separately licensed SKU or product for $270 user per month. But what we do see is a lot of users actually, or a lot of organizations picking Business Premium. And the reason for that is that Business Premium includes the versions of Office for use on PCs or laptops, etc. So it's got everything in Business Essential plus all the Office desktop applications, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Publisher, etc. And you can install that, each user can install that on up to 5 devices. So particularly useful if you're using Android or iOS tablets, and you want to have that functionality available, and it allows you to work quite effectively. A number of organisations, or many organisations, particularly those who want more sophisticated functionality around information management, compliance, business intelligence, have chosen to go the E3 license. That's about $2 per user per month more than Business Premium. That has no limit to the number of users, whereas Business Premium is limited to 300. And it delivers a whole lot of more sophisticated back-end compliance reporting and analysis features. So usually we find that organisations that expect a level of sophistication or that need stronger information management or discovery capabilities across their organisation from email, they'll move to the E3 license, which you then get everything in Business Premium, e.g. it includes Office Desktop, as well as everything in Business Essentials or E1, e.g. Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. So we see organisations picking generally one of those three options for their non-profit, from complete donation being the E1 Business Essentials through to $6.10 per user per month. And you can mix and match. So many organisations will pick E1 for some staff, E3 for others, and so the mix and match is fine. There's no problems picking what's right for each of your user bases. The sort of reasons that people extend beyond E1, and I did cover them briefly, but I'll talk more about them now, is that Office Pro Plus, so that desktop licenses are installed locally for each application. The mobile apps, so that organisations can edit and work successfully on tablets or when they're offline and not connected to the internet. Advanced email, legal hold, archiving, unlimited storage, particularly around the legal hold and compliance centre. Tools to support detailed analysis of your information and email use, as well as business intelligence and interactive dashboards. So they're the core reasons we see organisations working or choosing to go beyond that E1 donation license. The other thing is that there's a whole lot of additional add-ins and options that organisations choose. And these are options I just wanted to talk through quickly, because when you're thinking about implementation of Office 365, you should also be thinking about, well, this is what I use day one, but this is really what's going to give me value down the track. So what do I have in my project plan, if you like, in terms of once I've got the core established, this is round 2, this is round 3, these are the options for round 4, etc. And the sorts of options that we see organisations picking in terms of that extra value are Flow, which allows workflows to be developed to automate tasks or information flows between organisations or information stores. Forms to create surveys and quizzes. Planner to create plans, organise and assign tasks. Power Apps to build simple mobile and web apps so that you can have data stores and you can fill out, kick off those information requests when staff are out in the field. Stream for sharing videos. Gamma for sharing information across larger organisations, and Power BI for analysing your data and sharing insights. And we do separate webinars on many of those different elements, including Power BI, and we can spend a whole hour just talking about how we can utilise that on its own. The other things that organisations don't know enough about at this point in time, in our opinion, is EMSE3, which is the Enterprise Mobility and Security license option. That's on the right-hand side. The really exciting thing from our perspective is that Microsoft has decided to give nonprofits 50 free EMS E3 licenses. So that gives quite sophisticated Azure multi-factor authentication to secure your environment more effectively at no additional cost. If you go above 50 licenses, that's when you need to pay the $3.40 per user per month. But given that security is an increasing challenge in cloud and for nonprofits, EMSE3 is a fantastic option because it gives you multi-factor, it gives you Intune for mobile device management, it gives you cloud app security, and also Azure Active Directory Premium 1 licensing as well. So very useful, and I strongly recommend everyone, even if you've even all those with just donations, licenses, to pick up the 50 free licenses and apply them and make the greatest possible use out of it. EMSE5 is the next one along in terms of sophistication and cost. Really strong security controls, some really smart preventative analytics and reporting. If you deal with highly sensitive information in your Office 365 environment and you want sophisticated preventative and intuitive reporting, I strongly recommend you have a look at that. With all of these, you can get a 1-month free trial. And Office 365 E5 is the other one, which has all the features of E3, but also comes with voice capabilities. So that allows, off the bat, without connecting a PABX, that does allow incoming calls, outgoing calls for meetings, but you can also add PABX features if you add SIP trunks, etc., which is more sophisticated, but also worth considering. You've also got all the standard applications on subscription, Project, Visio, etc. So they're the other ones that I wanted to make sure you were aware of in your thinking about how do I implement Office 365 successfully. The reason we see other nonprofits implement Office 365, and this comes back to that thing I said at the start, be clear why you're implementing Office 365. What's your top 1, 2, or 3 reasons? Be really clear, be focused, and then drive value out of that implementation reason. So it might be, you might be, and we worked with an organisation just last week. The only reason they wanted to implement Office 365 was that reason on the top right. They want business intelligence dashboards to provide the analytics and share between their executive management. That was their #1 priority. They'll move their email and start file sharing down the track. That was priority 1. For other organisations, it's their email server is nearing end of life and they just want to get off it and simplify their email management and give themselves more space to store those emails. For other organisations, again, they want better mobile device management or improved mobile security, or they want to be able to work more effectively out of the office and share information and resources. And so part of that is both moving email to the cloud, but also moving documentation and file shares into the cloud within a SharePoint environment or a Teams environment. And that's where, for us, thinking about which of these reasons are your primary reason for moving to Office 365 is critical for implementation success. One of the things, though, that we often get asked is, oh my God, there's so many options within Office 365, what should I use? And that's what this next slide, slide 7, is designed to help with. This is helping organizations think about, just because there's lots of different options within Office 365 doesn't mean that you need to use everything on day one. Think about what's important, drive value out of that first. Don't confuse users with too much change on day one. So if what you're primarily chasing is better collaboration and document management for small teams, you should use the Teams app. If what you're chasing is large, broad collaboration in groups, you need to look at either Yammer or Teams, depending on how large the group is and how diverse it is from an organisational perspective. If it's all about sharing and booking calendars, resources and rooms, you should move to Exchange Online as your top priority. And it goes on. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, that's what you should be focusing on from a rollout perspective. Don't try and do everything at once. Don't try and do, because then the change journey becomes complex and sometimes confusing for staff. So focused on what's most important. If it's accessing emails and calendars and contacts from mobiles, roll out the Outlook mobile app, or you can use, in fact, the native apps within Android and iOS together with Exchange Online. But being clear on that is absolutely critical, because from our perspective, that gives you the timeline and the schedule for the implementation. It also allows you to build the business case for Office 365 and to get your executive and management team on board. The core reasons we've seen organisations put forward and have success with are listed below. So it's to reduce or eliminate server upgrades and refreshes. If you've, over the last few years, had to upgrade your Exchange server hardware and software, with Exchange Online, that's now taken care of as part of the E1 license at no cost. That'll save you both IT support, IT upgrade effort, and also server costs. If you want to drive video conferencing and teleworking structures and reduce meeting travel time and improve collaboration irrespective of location, then it would be Teams that you're looking to roll out. If you're looking to reduce risk of hardware failure or reduce investment in redundant hardware, then that's how you can build the business case so that you've got that DR solution and redundancy available irrespective of location. If your key is driving improved collaboration across locations, that's what Teams and SharePoint can allow you to do. Or creating that single source of truth through SharePoint and Power BI, so that staff don't need to look for either information or files in their own information stores. But that building the business case and justifying either the effort or the dollar investment in the migration to Office 365 is critical to ensuring that you get the value and then you can keep the journey going. But because there's so many options within Office 365, sometimes this is how people feel. A little bit confused, I'm not sure what to do first, how do I go through the journey? And that's why what we find is about 70% of organisations will go through this type of staging process to implement Office 365. So it'll be a process. Sometimes it'll be, as I mentioned earlier, I want to do Power BI first, everything else can come later. Sometimes it might be, I want SharePoint first, everything else can come later. But about 70% of organisations go through this process first, as in terms of the broad stages and thinking through the implementation approach. So my recommendation was, if you're not sure, start here. If it doesn't feel right, change it, but this is a useful starting point for your organisation if you want to move to an Office 365 environment. So first of all, it's think about the business case, be clear on why you're doing it, prepare your environment, pilot it. So if you want to get people on board, you can establish your Office 365 tenant without linking it to what you have on premise. You can get people comfortable with it, making sure you've got the basics under control. We recommend that organisations, have at least Office 2013 on their desktop environment. Office 2010 is no longer supported. If you're rolling out multi-factor authentication, that works far more effectively with Office 2016 and above. And we do recommend that because security is a greater concern these days than it was a few years ago, that all organisations think about whether they want to implement multi-factor authentication to protect their information. It's absolutely not required, but particularly for high risk or individuals within organisations, and the fact that you get the EMS E3 license for free, at least 50 of those licenses, it's worth considering. The step 4 is all about connecting what you have at the moment. So if you have an Active Directory server or something on premise into the Office 365 environment, whether that's through a synchronization process or through an ADFS process, and usually but not always an internet upgrade at one or more of your sites so that you can get things working. Usually we find organisations do email as the next step, and Teams for instant messaging, video conferencing, and also a training component as part of that rollout. Often, but not always, there'll be an Office. Sometimes, if needed, you'll do an Office rollout from, for instance, from 2010 to 2019, if that's needed as well. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't needed. Once that's bedded in, organisations will generally do a design piece around OneDrive, SharePoint or Teams. So what should sit where? Where do we want to store our information so staff can access it anywhere? What has to stay within a traditional file server environment? What should move into a Teams environment? What should move into a SharePoint environment? What are we using OneDrive for? And then we build that, launch it, run change management so people are used to using the environment, as well as training. Other things that are also in the consideration for project staging, and often come later rather than before step 6 or step 7, are things like OneDrive, Yammer for larger organisations, video, business intelligence / Power BI, Planner and telephony. So they're the other elements that organisations will sometimes intertwine in, either after 5, before 6, so before a SharePoint, or sometimes after but often it will actually be 8, 9 or 10 will be those sorts of elements. So that's the general staging that we find most organisations going through. But as I've said, do what's most important first. You will still generally need to do your authentication linkage so that you take all your on-premise user identities and synchronize them up or link them into the Office 365 cloud environment. But that's generally the approach we see organizations take. And our recommendation is that that if you're not sure what your path will be, start with this and change it only if it doesn't make sense to you. I will talk, because email is generally the first cab off the rank, I will talk about what the main email migration options are, just in case you're thinking and want a little bit more information about how do I do this myself, or if I'm talking to someone who wants to take me down this path, what are they likely going to take me, what are they going to talk to me about? And so there's 5 different migration types that I wanted just to briefly cover here. First one being a really simple Outlook client-based migration. That's manual. It can be performed by users themselves or by someone that is not detailed tech, if you like. This is not a complex migration, but it is only suitable for small organisations because of the manual effort involved and because it involves manual touch at each PC. But it is reasonably simple, works well, just it requires that manual effort. The next one being the IMAP migration, that supports a wider range of email platforms, but it is email only, no calendar, contacts or tasks. It can work reasonably well with Gmail or another non-Microsoft mail system, and it's suitable for organisations that don't require calendars and contacts transferred. If you're not one of those, you need to, if you need calendar and contacts, etc., you need to pick one of the other bottom three options, which is either a cutover email migration. That's good because it's a fast changeover. So generally when we do these, you change over on a weekend. There's an automated process from an Exchange server up into the cloud. You do need good technical server expertise, and there's no staging required. So it's often good between, let's say, 20 or 30 and 100 users. Once you get much over 100 users, that requirement to change everyone over on a weekend just becomes higher risk. So we've certainly done organisations with more than 200 users in a cutover, but the larger you get, the more likely you are to do either a third-party migration or a hybrid deployment, just to manage risk and manage change across your organisation. Fourth option up there is the third-party migration tools. They're the best option for hosted mail servers. So external Exchange, Telstra environment, we've done quite a few from. And it's generally a cost per user, but it's quite a managed and staged process. It's good when servers can be hard to get administrative access to, reasonably good user interface. It transfers everything, mail, calendar, contacts, etc. And there's no staging environment required, so that's really useful. The last one being the hybrid deployment, so that's good for large organisations. We've done organisations of 100 users, we've done others of 2,000 and 3,000 users in the hybrid deployment. That's a long-term coexistence environment, enables staging. Basically, you establish the environment, the Exchange Online server talks to your local server, and then you run users in batches to migrate them across. And the core thing is thinking about the batching, the migration, change management, etc. And so that can work really well, but there is more effort involved in the setup, which is why it's most appropriate for the larger organisation size. So they're the core migration types that, particularly in the early stages of the migration to Office 365, when you're thinking about your implementation, you want to have that high-level overview for. The other thing from our perspective is thinking about collaboration and how it works within an Office 365 environment. Because we've seen some organisations take to collaboration fantastically within Office 365, other organisations have really struggled. And for us, this slide helps people to understand and think about what's right for them. So from our perspective, it comes down to organisational culture and size as well. And that's why there's not one size that fits all. There's lots of different ways of collaborating within an organisation. And that's what this slide is intended to show. And it also depends for us in terms of what type of organisation you are. And so if you want to, if the type of collaboration that you're trying to do, is particularly informal and across the whole organisation, and it's not, it's reasonably but not dramatically time sensitive, that's where Yammer can be really useful. However, if you have something time sensitive and formal, that's where Teams or instant messaging is the right choice for you. And so what we've tried to show here is showing that there are multiple different tools within an Office 365 environment. Our general recommendation is don't try and use them all, because users will get perplexed and confused. Simplify it, pick the tools that are most relevant for you, and help users understand where it's of use to use them. If you try and roll out SharePoint team sites, Office 365 groups, Planner, OneDrive, Skype, and Office 365 video, everyone will just get confused. So it's about thinking about how your organization wants to collaborate, which element and which tool and what collaboration type is most important, and focusing on that, helping people to understand where that should be used. The other thing that's really important to understand from a collaboration tool perspective is that, as a rule of thumb, preferences change depending on what generation your staff come from. If you've generally got baby boomers, they will generally prefer, as you see there, in-person meetings or email. Very less will it be conversational user interfaces or virtual online meetings. However, if you've got a Gen Z, virtual online meetings are fine, as are team workspaces, as is persistent chat, as is conversational user interfaces. And so understanding preferences that people have, together with the previous slide of this is what tool is best for different types of collaboration, will help you pick which tools to roll out for collaboration within your organization. Often, particularly when I'm running workshops, people say, well, I've got a bit of everything. And I say, yes, so do we. The challenge is that you then need to think about very carefully about what's your change management and your rollout strategy to take people on that journey so you get everyone using it. Don't just assume that because your Gen Zs are comfortable with Teams and social networking and persistent chat means that your baby boomers will be. Think about how you get those on that journey as well. So that view of, what does a different generation prefer is really critical to the implementation strategy. Teams I need to cover because this is a core platform that brings together for a team instant messaging, group chat, file sharing, and calendar. It's completely replaced Skype for all new tenants. So all the online meetings are now Teams, instant messages are now within a Teams interface and group chat. So Teams is fantastic because it does bring all those components together and allows organizations to work very effectively within a team, or for staff to work effectively within each of the teams that they work within. So it's a great collaboration tool, but there are differences to working with file shares. And so it's helping all staff understand those differences and make the most of them. Looking at time, I'm going to move a little bit more quickly so we've got time for questions. Under the covers, actually I will move back, under the covers with Teams for file sharing is actually SharePoint Online. And SharePoint Online is a great multifaceted tool for a whole lot of different reasons. Company intranet, file server replacement for small organizations, forms and distribution for administration processes, project sites for collaboration, although Teams should also be considered for that. And it's really useful to take people on the journey and allow people to collaborate effectively with that core file sharing and storage structure so that organizations can access their files anywhere, even when they're out of the office. You can synchronize SharePoint document libraries through to local PCs so that if people need to work offline, that's also possible as well. And it really enables organizations to move into a mobile environment effectively. The one thing I will mention, though, when you're thinking about implementation considerations, is that you do need, while Office 365 is in the cloud, you do need to think about how do you connect it back to your on-premise environment. And so the infrastructure considerations summarized here on slide 16 are some of the things that you need to think through. They're the most important things. So for instance, mobile device management. Do you need to manage or have remote access to your devices so you can control them effectively, and remote wipe them or understand how you gain access to them if they're lost or stolen. On the bottom left-hand side, what local infrastructure will you still require, if any? Some organisations require none. Others still have applications or large sites where it makes a whole lot of common sense to have infrastructure on premise. Where you've got them, what is your backup solution? Actually, both for your Office 365 environment. For some organisations, it makes sense to back up either Exchange Online or SharePoint Online. For others, they're comfortable with the default storage and retention options within Office 365. And so these are the elements that we recommend organisations think through around what is your infrastructure to connect your on-premise environment to your Office 365 cloud environment. I will just talk quickly about internet connectivity, because one of the key things from our perspective is, or one of the frustrations that we see is organisations that move to Office 365 but don't think about their internet. And so thinking about what internet connection do you have at each of your sites, what is it able to support, and is it appropriate for what I want to use it for, is critical to making sure you get value out of Office 365. Don't migrate everyone to the cloud on an ADSL2 connection and expect them to be able to video conference, access files in the cloud, as well as move your finance system and client and case management system. So think about what your internet connections are at each site, because whether you're in Australia, New Zealand, or another country, high-speed internet is not always cost-effective in every location. So work through that and design your solution based on your internet connection. The other thing is design for security from day one. Much easier to get this right during the initial implementation approach than it is to change it and implement it after the fact. So the first comment is think about your security culture. Do staff understand how to spot a phishing email? Do staff have strong complex passwords? Do you understand your use of, do staff understand your use of technology policy, or even do you have one so that you can keep your information safe? Those first points are actually nothing about Office 365. You should do that even if you're not migrating to Office 365. But it's useful if you're on this journey in order to step back and think that about your security culture, because if you don't get that right, that's going to be a core problem, and it's going to add risk for you. Second point is use those 53 EMS E3 licenses to enable risk-based reporting and monitor those risk-based reports. Consider deploying Intune for mobile device management, and Intune's part of the MSE3 license. So you get 50 Intune licenses to assign to users at no cost if you're an eligible non-profit. Also consider rolling out multi-factor authentication for everyone. If that's not viable, consider blocking sign-in from all countries except Australia, or all countries except New Zealand, or deploy multi-factor authentication to just high-risk individuals, the executive, IT administrators, CEO, etc., because that will reduce your risk and give you a higher degree of confidence that your information stays safe. Even if staff understand how to spot a phishing email, sometimes they are not as vigilant as they should be. So as I said, design from our top tips, I'm going to do these quickly, given time, design for security from day one. We see more and more organisations move to a cloud-only environment with Azure Active Directory domain services with Windows 10 PCs. That's a really good low-cost, low-touch infrastructure solution. Implement the most valuable areas first. Often that's Exchange and email. Other areas such as SharePoint and BI can come later. Explain the benefits of staff. Take them on the journey, so that they understand why they're using it and use change champions. Internet bandwidth, make sure that's up to scratch for the move to the cloud. Upgrade to Office 365 2019, particularly if you're going to use Office 365 for file sharing. Use an expert to make the transition easier if you're not comfortable or not familiar with this sort of transition process. Consider local storage if you work with large videos, particularly video editing, or if you have poor internet connectivity. Ensure each application you've implemented within Office 365 has that clear purpose and adds value. Don't just go for everything because staff will get confused, and roll out in stages. Don't do everything at once. Take staff on the journey, communicate why. Whole stack of additional resources that are available, which I'm not going to go through now. Instead, I'm going to hand back to Tina to see if we've got questions.
Thanks, Marcus. We do have a question. The question comes from Karina. If we already have a traditional paid Office 365 Office package, can we move to an NFP cloud version?
If you're an eligible non-profit, which Connecting Up can help you with determining that, absolutely you can move that to a cloud version. My memory now, it used to be a painful migration. I think it's a much easier migration these days. So first step is confirm your eligibility. Connecting Up will be able to do that for you or with you. It's an online process. And if you are, then it's a matter of migrating to a non-profit tenant. But if you're not sure, you absolutely should do that because it will save you a bucket load of money.
Great, thanks. And Karina, if you wanted me to direct to the right person in our team to assist you with that, then just send an email through to events@connectingup.org. The next question is from Christina. Do we also need to pay for volunteer licenses when we sign up for the premium package?
So volunteer is a separate license, which, as you saw earlier, it's what was the amount? $2.70 per user per month. If you're using the E3 license, my memory is that can be used for volunteers as well. So you can absolutely assign an E3 license for volunteers. I will double check that because I haven't been asked that question for a few months, but I'm 99% sure that is correct.
Okay. We don't have any other questions, Marcus. So was there anything you wanted to add before we finish off for the day?
No, I hope that's been really useful, everyone. I suppose from our perspective, it's about making your journey a success. So do things in stages, think it through, make sure your internet and your infrastructure will support you on that journey. And I wish you all the best for the future. Thanks, Tina.
Thanks, Marcus. Sorry, we just had one last question come through. If I want to migrate from a standard to E3 license, how do I do that?
Really easy. You just purchase an E3 license and assign it to the user and unassign the standard license. So that's just done within the admin portal. You just need to buy the license first and then assign it to the user or users that you want the license to be allocated to. So literally a couple of minutes, no more than that. No technical changes required.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Marcus, for presenting today, and thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you've all learned a lot from this presentation and that your questions have been answered. If you do have any other questions that come to mind later on or any feedback at all, please send that through to events@connectingup.org and we will answer those questions offline. Don't forget the recording will be available on our website very shortly and a link will be sent to you, so keep an eye out on your inbox. Again, thank you for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.